Welcome, Bay Community, to another Wellness Wednesday. And without further ado, we will get started. So tonight, I'm going to share my screen as always. So tonight, we're going to do sort of special. I've been trying to make this, various holiday themes. So I hope that can be appreciated. I do want to remind folks that if you have ideas or things that you want to talk about, things you want to hear about, things you want to learn about, please go to our Bay Community Health Facebook page and post things that you're interested in. I do check, and I'm always open to learning about something new or sharing about something I haven't shared on, or going back over something that maybe you missed and you really want to be present and have the discussion. So please give us your feedback. So tonight, I wanted to start saying happy holidays. I hope everyone had a lovely Thanksgiving, and we are full on in the holiday season now. It feels cold. I found frozen water outside on my porch, leaving it out this afternoon. And so we are definitely in the holiday season. Tonight, we are going to talk about parenting and the holidays. Like I said, it's officially the holiday season. Parenting during this time can be so chaotic. You have work, family, community, church, friends, events to attend, everything in between, not to mention the normal activities that you have as part of being a parent that have to do with your child's day-to-day activities, whether that's just getting them to and from school or that's activities after school. You're doing it all. It might be recitals. It's recital and performance time for those of you that have kids involved with instruments, dance, or plays. And then there are the presents. Whether you celebrate Christian holidays or other holidays, doesn't matter. A lot of them have presents this time of year. It's also a time where we tend to thank our people that service us, whether it's our mailmen and women or it's our teachers. We tend to get gifts for them. So there's a lot of presents going on. And basically, it's a lot for anyone. So while I cannot lighten the load or your schedule, I can maybe suggest some ways of changing perspective that might make it seem a little bit more less stressful. So I hope, that is my hope, that that's what's going to happen tonight. Tonight, I wanted to talk about the benefits of giving. Speaking of presents, I wanted to talk about the benefits of giving. Last week, we talked a little bit about gratitude and happiness and how they are connected. I will touch back on that tonight. I really wanted to remind us all that even though it's a lot, we have a lot going on, that there's some really good things that can come out of the holiday season. I know for some of you, actually, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we talked about gratitude. Last week, we talked about difficult conversations, and I do want to touch on that again. I know for many of us, this is a hard time. Maybe something unfortunate happened during the holiday season, and so the holidays bring up those memories, or maybe you're a parent that doesn't quite have the family around you that you want. And so this time of year can feel a little lonely. And what I want to tell you is that the act of giving can help with those things. So even if it isn't giving a present to someone, it can be any act of giving. We're going to talk about all of those. So in the midst of all this holiday chaos, I wanted to let you know that the act of giving and volunteering can do for you and your family some good from a health perspective. And it might put back a little bit of joy in these activities. So let's talk about it. So helping others can trigger pretty strong impacts within our brain. And these are positive impacts. I want to go over some of them. First, there's the impact of empathy. So there are structures in the brain that I'll go into a little bit more detail, but there are structures in the brain that are dedicated to helping you see different perspectives. And when you have different perspectives, these mental processes get some great exercise. And when you put yourself in the shoes of another person and try to give them what they need, that kind of stimulates different neural pathways. It stimulates pathways of empathy and compassion. And those can really have a tremendous impact and start to stimulate different type of chemical reactions in the brain. We also have something for those of you that have been in my office before. I do talk about mirror neurons. So when we are part of a group that we're around every day or all the time or for multiple hours in the day, this can either be a partner in our life, it can be our kids, it can be our coworkers, whomever we spend a lot of time with. What you'll notice is that the mood is kind of infectious, right? And there's a reason for that. Because we are social creatures. We are meant to be part of a pack or a group or whatever you want to call it. Okay. And because of that, it's important for us to be able to mirror each other's energies, each other's moods. That's why when someone's in a bad mood, it can impact us so much, especially if we're close to them and we spend a lot of time with them. It's also why it's so important to work on grounding ourselves. So when we ground ourselves, we're able to be kind of like the emotional alpha in the room, and then people will begin to mirror us. So it's why when I have a session with someone, before I see every single person, I take a moment to reground myself. So if they're really struggling, they know that they have a consistent, very level-headed person in the room that can help them through it. It's also why it's really important as a parent that even when your kids are driving you nuts, to take that deep breath as an adult, to use that prefrontal cortex that we have and is developed and in our children may not be, because that gives us forethought, that gives us the ability to plan, it gives us the ability to think about consequences. And when we do that, and we think about consequences and we take a moment to ground ourselves, then our kids will actually mirror our emotional response. It doesn't always happen immediately, and it doesn't happen like this magical moment, but you will start to notice it. I definitely talk about this a lot in relationship therapy, because oftentimes that's what creates a fight, right? One person comes in angry, they're creating the alpha space, they're dominating. The other person then what? Gets angry. And you go back and forth and you feed off of each other's energy. And what happens out of something that was started out small, it becomes a big argument, right? It happens with our kids too. So when it's a negative thing, it also can happen with a positive thing. So helping others is often highly social activity, and it creates a beautiful cycle of smiling. So I talked a little bit about laughter maybe a week or two ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and why laughter can be so important. And this is the same thing. Smiling is truly a contagious thing. Even if all you do in a given day is just smile at a stranger walking by, that can create a pattern of increased mood and a whole bunch of people that you don't even know, because it's infectious. So it really does mean when you smile, the whole world smiles, because you're triggering mirror neurons to do the same thing that you're doing. And both the giver and the receiver get a positive impact from that. So what's part of that positive impact? Well, part of that positive impact is we get 4 different chemicals that start to be released in our brain. Some of these chemicals are released using other processes. So I want to start with dopamine. So dopamine is the hormone that drives your brain reward system, right? So when you give yourself a reward, whether it's chocolate or it's a little bit of social media screen time, whatever it is, when you're doing something pleasurable, dopamine's released. And dopamine is both great, and it's also what causes or what can can lead to causing addictive behavior. So dopamine is released when we're in the act of giving. So even giving can become something that happens more often because it does make us feel good. So, dopamine can be released in many different things. It could be from eating a good meal, listening to inspiring music, getting a massage, completing a physical activity or workout, achieving a goal that you've been really striving for. All of these things release dopamine and gives feelings of well-being and motivates you to seek those activities again and enjoy it and to do well. So it's a really important chemical that we want to be released in our brain. The next one I want to talk about is serotonin. So serotonin is more of a mood stabilizer, and it also allows us to have feelings of well-being and happiness. And additionally, it helps reduce anxiety. That's why for a lot of people that have anxiety, they take something called a serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor. And those are basically pills that help keep serotonin out in our brain. So more neurons grab the serotonin, and it causes this reaction. It helps us to decrease our worry and our anxiety and decrease our concern. And it's associated actually with learning and memory. So we really want serotonin to be around. It's also when we're feeling super depressed, we're very anxious, we don't remember well. So serotonin is naturally triggered by regular things that we do every day, going for a walk in the sunshine. So these will sound familiar if you've talked to me and we're talking about reducing anxiety and giving yourself active recovery. When you do active recovery, it releases serotonin. So going outside and listening for birds, feeling the sunshine on your face, hearing the breeze blow through the trees, getting a good night's sleep, spending time paying attention or being in nature, other self-care activities, like we mentioned before, a massage or just doing something that fills you up will release serotonin and reduce your stress levels. And serotonin is released when we're giving back, whether it's giving a gift or it's volunteering, serotonin's released. Endorphins. So we've heard about these before. Endorphins are produced by our central nervous system. Our central nervous system is our brain and our spinal cord, right? And it helps us deal with physical pain. It's why you hear these stories about people that they broke their arm, but they're in a really intense moment and they managed to still do something incredible despite having a broken arm or a broken leg. And after the event's over, they're like, wow, my leg and my arm now really hurt. But it didn't hurt when they initially broke it. It's probably because they had a lot of endorphins released because they were in this intense moment. And the pain was reduced. So when endorphins are released, your response to pain and stress are reduced. So, and we can get endorphins released during exercise, or like I said, some really intense moments. And this is interesting because endorphins are also released when we express gratitude. And gratitude has also been found to reduce pain. So if you are someone with chronic pain, if you are someone, and you're struggling finding the right combination of things, maybe volunteering, and I recommend this a lot to people that are feeling anxious, depressed, struggling, is to find ways to volunteer and give back. And it's amazing while you're in that act of giving that suddenly your pain reduces a little bit. You don't notice it. Yes, you're distracted, but also these other chemicals are at play. So endorphins are really important. Then there's oxytocin. If you spent any time paying attention to or learning about pregnant women, oxytocin is what we call the love hormone. And it is definitely, it has been extensively researched as when this is released, our life satisfaction levels shoot through the roof. It appears to play a really large role in women's physiology and happiness, a little bit more than men, probably the main correlate of that is because oxytocin is released during breastfeeding. It's released a lot when the mother, right after the mother's had the child, during that time when the mother and child are together, oxytocin's released. And so, and that's, if you can think of it evolutionarily, that's really important, right? You want the mother to feel feelings despite having gone through this traumatic experience of having a baby. You want really high life satisfaction, so the mother keeps taking care of the baby. And that happens, right? Oxytocin's released. Well, guess when it also happens? When we're giving back. So this hormone provides a multiple hit by also stimulating serotonin and dopamine while lowering anxiety. So oxytocin has this like really amazing effect on multiple things. So there are all these different chemicals that impact our brain and are released while we're doing something where we're giving back. So just to kind of recap, giving doesn't mean just the act of giving gifts. It can also mean giving of your time, which is one of my favorite parenting activities, is to get my kids involved with some sort of activity where, whether it's writing, even just the act of writing thank you notes and then giving them, or, little things like that, or going and helping a neighbor do something small. They're all acts of giving. So just to show that this isn't coming out of nowhere, I wanted to share some research with you. So one study published in 2013 from the American Journal of Public Health found that giving time and assistance to others actually reduced mortality risk tied to stress, and is a known risk factor for many chronic diseases. So giving back can actually reduce not only your stress, but your mortality rate. According to that study that looked over 800 adults in the Detroit area, they found that stress did not predict mortality for the participants who had helped others, who had given back or volunteered in the previous year. The link instead between stress and mortality was more apparent in people that didn't lend a helping hand. And that was what we call adjusted for age, health, and other variables. So they looked at, was this caused by some other variable? Like, well, the mortality rate was because the person was older. So what they were saying was even older people that gave back had a lower mortality rate, so for that age group, than people of that same age group that didn't give back. So that's how they adjust for those things, right? And they do the same thing for health or other variables. And they group them by different groupings, and they look and they compare the ones that gave back, volunteered, did acts of kindness versus people that didn't. And what showed up every time was the people that gave back had lower mortality rates, less stress, among other things. It reduces depressive symptoms and lowers your blood pressure, right? There's another study found that volunteerism reduced mortality rates in California more than exercising 4 times a week. Now, and more time than exercising 4 times a week and attending church regularly. Now, what I want to say before you all go, oh, I see, I don't need to exercise anymore. All I need to do is start giving people gifts. Stop right there. These are all like what I call spokes on a wheel. Some of them can have greater impact than others. What we're saying, good exercise can still reduce your risk of mortality, right? It can reduce stress. It can do all of those things. We've talked to, if you've talked to your doctor about these things, you've definitely heard that before. So I'm not saying stop exercising. What I'm saying is you can give back in the act of giving. So maybe going for a run isn't your favorite thing. So go for a walk, enjoy nature, get that gratitude in that we talked about before. And then, or maybe go rake leaves in your neighbor's yard or shovel that snow. I know, maybe we won't get any snow this year, but all these things, shovel that snow from your next door neighbor's sidewalk, and that might feel really good. So that's what we're saying. And I'm not saying don't attend church. Church is a wonderful thing. And there's so many studies out there that show that hope and faith have a tremendous impact on people's life satisfaction and their mortality rate as well. So before you want to stop any of those other things and just start buying gifts, I want to remind you that all of this stuff is related to really authentic giving because you want to help out. Okay. So another study revealed that those that serve in their communities live longer than those that don't. And that was in 2011. And that was a study that went across the US. And they noticed that on average, older adults, which meant 55 or older, who volunteered reduced their mortality risk by 47%. So this is yet again another example of why volunteering can be so important. Volunteering can reduce depression, stress, anxiety. Focusing on others instead of your own day-to-day struggles can diminish your own stress and anxiety. A study at a University of Texas found that helping to improve your community lowers levels of anxiety and depression, especially in those in the age of over 65. In another study, we found that random acts of kindness lowered anxiety, particularly social anxiety. So that's interesting. So for those of you that are saying, oh, I can't go volunteer because I really don't like being in groups and I don't like being out in public. Well, actually going out in public and doing these things, but when you're doing it for a good cause, you kind of forget that you're with that group. Because you know what? When you're giving back, people aren't judging you. People aren't paying attention to being judged. If anything, they're grateful you're there. So suddenly that change and kind of turns social anxiety on your head, because really what happens a lot with social anxiety is we have a really big fear of being judged and criticized. And when we're giving back, when we're volunteering, no one's paying attention to that. So especially if you're there for the right reasons, right? So we can really promote more positive perceptions and expectations of how others will respond to us and in situations by giving back. When we practice kindness, whether it's a small or large or a big scale, right? Our brains release those chemicals I was talking about before, right? Dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin, that promote this sense of well-being. And it's actually called a helper's high. So creating these acts of kindness and giving back can not only, reduce all these negative symptoms, but it increases your life satisfaction. It increases that feel-good feeling. It creates connection among other people. When you give something to someone, it's often why when people give someone a gift, they stick around, right? They want to watch the person open the gift because the gift is a connection. It's an ask for a connection between that person and the other one. And it's often a connection that's saying, hey, I thought about you and I want you to know I thought about you. Okay. And even in some cases for folks that feel like they're lonely and they don't know what direction their life is going, volunteering can sometimes help them find their purpose. That I've seen that many times where volunteering can help someone determine what feels important to them. So there are all these benefits, right? So I'm giving you all this just to give you the background of during this time of, and we even call it a time of giving, right? Even though it's really stressful, remembering that this act of giving and volunteering, even if it's something small, can really have tremendous impact, not just on you, but also on your kids. And when you're doing it, you're modeling that behavior for your kids. So even though you might be stressed out, trying to fit something like this in, and so I know what you're asking, how in the world do I do this with my kids, right? Okay, great. But you already told me this time of year is super chaotic and I don't have time to do it, right? So how am I going to do this with my kids? There's so many different options. I just did some quick searches online just for our region, our, Anne Arundel County, Calvert County area, and there were so many, which I'm going to show you some of them in a second. But in general, some really easy ones that are always out there to find. That if you belong to a church, that's a great place to go to initially. There's almost always volunteering activities or ways to give back through your church. If you are not a churchgoer, no problem. Salvation Army, I know, offers adopt-a-family programs, as well as a lot of you can go to your local county government, and a lot of time social services will have ways to adopt families or help out with families as well. And there are also tons of organizations that help out with homeless families and families that are less fortunate. So, or even if you aren't a churchgoer, you can go to a local church and ask them, how they're helping local families and say that you want to adopt one. So you can adopt a family. You can donate to a local food drive. Oftentimes the public school systems are doing food drives during this time of year. There are also other food drives that are going on from other organizations. You can participate in a community meal. During this time of the year, there are lots of organizations that are trying to put together Thanksgiving meals, Christmas dinners for those that can't do it themselves. I have a woman, a social worker in my own neighborhood that just puts together from the people that she knows that don't have the money to buy meals. Every Thanksgiving, our neighborhood gets together and puts together baskets of Thanksgiving food for families that they can't afford to do it. And I make my kids participate. We go to the grocery store together, we have our list, we put it together, and we talk about it. So this is what's important too. It's one thing to go grab the stuff and say, hey, we got to go get canned goods. Talk about why you're doing it and what it's all about. That is going to change this from a mindless activity to something that's meaningful. And that meaningful aspect is what's going to give you the health benefits. So even if you're being completely quote unquote selfish and you're doing this for the health benefits, still talk about why this act of giving is important, not just from a health perspective, but talk about it as to why it's important to help others. This time of year is a great time of year with kids to donate clothes and toys. So in my household, Santa Claus leaves out a bag. I have a bag that we give to Santa every year that's filled with gently used clothing and gently used toys that Santa can give as extra toys and clothes to kids and family that are less fortunate. And Santa really appreciates that, because if we have too many things of our own, then there's not really space to get anything new, right? So there are ways that you can even get Santa involved. Donating clothes and toys. There's usually a coat drive around this time of year. Again, having your kids help. I have young kids, as you know, if you've ever watched one of these before, I have young kids, and I sit down with them. It takes time. And I know some of this takes time, but instead of them sitting on a screen because you're both tired and they're playing something on their tablet and you're binge watching a show, go sit in their bedroom with them, go through their drawers and ask them what clothes fit and what don't fit, or what they like and what they don't like, and have them fill up a grocery bag full of clothes or toys that they don't play with anymore. And they'll feel really good when they give up a toy. And depending on the age of your kids, a lot of times what happens if you pick out the toys, they'll go back through the pile and take all the toys out and say, no, I want this one. But if you ask them to pick it out, a lot of times, then it's their decision and they'll be kind of happy and proud of themselves for sharing the toy. And it feels really good to them. So related to this, in terms of food drives, a little promotion for Bay Community. Bay Community is having a food drive right now. Goodwill is always taking donations of clothes and toys. And then of course, there are clothes and toy bins everywhere. I really like the act of giving the items to someone. That's why I like Goodwill and their donation centers, because that act of seeing another human can be really powerful. Also, if you have the availability to go to soup kitchens or homeless shelters or shelters where you can get involved with some older kids, where you're help preparing a meal and giving it out, even if they're younger. Even when my kids were really young, we went to help a local church that we don't even attend, but we asked if we could help. And the kids went around and gave everybody peppermints. And because they were really little and they really couldn't spoon food out, I wouldn't trust them to do it on their own plate. But they got to give out peppermints and candy canes, and they were so excited to do that. And just for them to see people that were appreciative of it and didn't take it for granted, it has a huge impact on the kids. So I don't pretend to think this is easy. That's why we have to talk about, again. So those are some ideas. So again, how do we do this? You got to make a plan. So what I suggest, and I'm going to show you some options, is that you get some options lined up, things that you think you might be able to swing, right? Things that might be easier depending on your kids' ages and your kids' attention span and all the above, what do you feel like you might have the time and the patience to do? So a lot of times you might not get any further than getting a few canned goods together. That's it. And that's where you start. Great. Right. But get a few options together and then talk to your kids about it. You might be surprised at what they want to do. I had a neighbor who used to gather old blankets for a pet sanctuary, and she was so into it. She would walk around the neighborhood and ask people for old blankets that they weren't using anymore to take to the pet sanctuary. The cool thing about the pet sanctuary is she could bring them there and give them to the animals, and that felt really good for her. So, you know, giving back to even animals can be really powerful as well. It doesn't have to be a human. So this is part of the getting your kids active and involved in deciding what to do. And then, like I talked about before, get your kids involved in the process of doing the thing. It's one thing to say, hey, we're going to donate a gift, you know, a food basket to a family, and you went out and you bought everything and you have the basket, and you put it all together and you're like, okay, kids, we're going to go take this to somebody's house. Get them involved in every step of the process. You pick your kids up from school, stop at the grocery store on the way home and pick up the canned goods. Or if you already have the canned goods, have them get the stuff out of the kitchen and make a pile, and then get the boxes or the baskets out and put it together, right? Really get them involved in as many steps of the process as you can, including the act of giving it to the person, the adult, the whatever, because that's what's really going to impact them. So getting them as much involved in the process will be super, super important. And the more they can have face-to-face contact with that animal pet, I mean, even if we're just talking about giving gifts to their teachers, having them involved with making a card that's part of the gift, or having them tell you or find out what their teacher's into. That's really fun, because they might say, oh, my teacher really loves the beach. Well, then you can have your child help pick out something that's beachy. And again, it's that act of giving that will give them a little boost of happiness, and you too. So just to kind of go back over why this is important, because I really think it's important. This act of giving this is my little math equation for the night. You know, gratitude plus happiness, you know, gratitude and happiness come out of giving. So giving can equal gratitude and happiness. This connection between gratitude and happiness, and this was a slide from past weeks, is multidimensional. So the act of giving is kind of an act of being grateful, right? Because being grateful for something, especially if you're telling someone you're grateful for them, that's an act of giving. And it creates confidence, it creates optimism, it creates that empathy, it creates purpose. And that really leads to a more true type of happiness than seeking validation from a piece of social media, seeking validation from someone else telling them that they're wonderful. So that's my little gift to you, to remind you that giving really can do this, can bring about these good feelings. And yes, it takes a little bit of work, but there are some really like low work things you can do where you can start to feel this. So where can we do this around here? Again, I did a quick search, but these are the things I found. I was really impressed. Both if you go to Maryland.org, they listed it by county of volunteer organizations that had open volunteering opportunities. So I just gave a list of all the ones in Anne Arundel County. Some of the ones in Calvert County were the ones that I pictured here. You know, even if it means giving back by doing some yard work or some environmental cleanup, remind your kids that that's a way that they're giving back to Mother Earth, right? Or they're taking care of the environment, not just for themselves, but for everyone else around them, because it's all our planet. So that's yet another way that you're volunteering and giving back. It doesn't always have to be giving a thing to somebody else. It can be cleaning up a wetland area, or you know, helping a neighbor out with yard work. But these are some of the organizations that I found that had open and kind of continual volunteer opportunities. So if you go to any of these, they will list this. What I found both Calvert County and Maryland.org had an entire volunteer section on their websites. Volunteers of America has a mission of an adopting a family. So we talked about that earlier. So that's why I want to put that one on there. And what it does is connects family in needs of assistance with those in the community that have a desire to help. The adoptive family, relies on people to make it happen. And the people that do it, it can be a business or it can be a family, and it's totally up to you whether you adopt one family or more. And they kind of give you some flexibility as to what you do for that family. The American Land Trust was another one I found that offers activities including trail maintenance, things that are more adult like carpentry and equipment repair and electrical work, but it also has things like marsh cleanup and gardening and doing things like that can be also kid oriented. So there were lots of different opportunities around here. And if you want to be even a little closer to home, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the things that Bay Community is doing. So Bay Community currently has a holiday food drive, and you can turn in food, non-perishable food items or personal grooming items between the 21st, we have it going on the whole, December 21st through January 31st. And we're collecting these things. You can drop off these items at our West River or Lothian office, and they can be left at the front desk. And if you have any questions about it, if you just email outreach@baycommunityhealth.org, someone will be more than happy to give you more information. So I had to share that because Bay Community has some great opportunities. And one more Bay Community shout out. So Friday at Homestead Gardens in Davidsonville, the local Rotary Club and in partnership with Homestead Gardens is sponsoring the Lights of Kindness. And so it's all these Christmas trees that are decorated, or holiday trees that are decorated from different organizations in the community. Now, the fun of it is that you can donate money to vote for trees. And that is another way. I know I watched one grandmother last year give her grandchildren, I don't know, a few dollars here and there. And the grandchildren went around and voted for their favorite trees. And you know what? It doesn't matter which one they vote for. I mean, it does vote for Bay Community. But in the end, you're doing an act of kindness, no matter who you vote for. And I have to tell you, this year, I actually put a picture in of some of the people from Bay Community that helped out make these trees. I participated in this year. I did it in between, seeing people at work, and it wasn't the most convenient thing, but I have to tell you, it did bring a lot of joy. It felt good to make, and what I did at home was I had my family help me make the ornaments that I made, so my family helped make the ornaments that we put on the tree that I contributed. And that felt good for my kids too. So when they get to see the tree, they're going to see the ornaments that they helped make on this tree, and they're going to see other people commenting on it. And that's going to feel really good to them. So just yet another way that we can get these feel-good hormones and find ways through giving and through volunteering work. So I hope you don't mind my little shameless, self Bay Community promotion there, but we do have those couple of opportunities. So that's all for tonight. I always thank you all for joining me in these sessions. And I want to, I'll be back next week. We'll have another session or two before the holiday break. Please, please, please. I would love to have a bunch of ideas on topics that people want to talk about when it relates to parenting and mental health. And the more ideas that you bring, the more things we'll be able to share and talk about. Please join us live. I would love to have some parents live with us. We'll go through the slides, and then we can have discussions. I can stop the recording. We can have discussions about what is coming up for you and really talk through some of this stuff. The discussion is so invaluable. So I really hope that more of you are able to join live on Wednesdays from 6 to 7. And if you can't join live, I understand. You can always watch these videos either off of our Facebook page or our YouTube page, where they're always posted. So I hope that the holiday season has started off well for you. Please go out and give of your time and your kindness, because you will be rewarded twofold in a health perspective. So with that, I wish you well. I wish you a season of happiness, and I will talk to you all again soon. Thank you so much, Bay community. Have a great night.